Inside Texas death row, 35 minutes inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit. In the heart of West Texas, in a place where the sun burns relentlessly and the wind whispers through desolate plains, lies a fortress unlike any other, the Allan B. Polunsky Unit. Here, the world's most dangerous inmates live in a state of near constant isolation, waiting for a fate that most fear to even think about: death. This is Texas death row. For decades, Polunsky has been a home of condemned men, some guilty of crimes so shocking they haunt communities to this day. But inside these walls, it's not just a law that rules, it's fear, survival, and the psychology of men staring down the end of life. Today, for the next 35 minutes, we will step inside the most secure section of Polunsky. We will meet inmates, guards, and the chilling routines that define life and death here. What you are about to see is as close to death row as any outsider can get without crossing a line that cannot be undone. Arrival at Polunsky. Visitors are rare. Every movement is monitored. Cameras, steel gates, armed officers. Nothing is left to chance. Even the air feels different, a tense stillness that sinks into your bones. The men here are not just prisoners. They are figures trapped in a system designed to strip away humanity. Each step down these hallways echoes of years, decades, and sometimes lifetimes they've left behind and the time they've left to live. The isolation. Polunsky's death row is designed for isolation. Each inmate spends 23 hours a day in a small cell. Contact with other humans is minimal. The only reprieve, an hour alone in a caged outdoor area under the scorching Texas sun, where even freedom is illusion. Many prisoners describe it as psychological warfare. Time moves differently here. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. The mind can turn on itself when left alone for this long. A day on death row. Life on Polunsky is dictated by strict routines. Meals arrive like clockwork. Showers are brief. The outside world exists only through brief glimpses of mail or the rare visitor. Guards are omnipresent. Inmates learn quickly that any misstep can mean punishment or, worse, isolation extended. The walls, they talk to you. Every scratch, every echo, it's like they're keeping score of your sanity. The men inside, the men on death row are infamous for their crimes. But beyond that, each carries a story, a life, and a psyche shaped by violence, regret, and survival instincts. Some have been here for decades. Some arrived yesterday. And all of them share one certainty: their days are numbered. And yet, even here, life finds its own rhythm. Alliances form, conflicts ignite, and the struggle for power, psychological or otherwise, is relentless. The guard's perspective. Polunsky is not only a story of inmates, it is a story of the people who oversee them. The guards live with constant vigilance. One lapse could be deadly, and over time, even the hardest of men admit, death row changes everyone, including those who stand on the other side of the bars. Retired guard. You can't let it get to you. You can't. But some nights, you lie in bed thinking about what you saw that day and it stays with you. The psychological toll. Isolation, monotony, and the looming shadow of execution. These are the tools that break a man's mind. Psychologists warn that prolonged exposure to these conditions can cause hallucinations, depression, and irreversible trauma. Some survive, some don't. In the next segment, we will meet some of the most notorious inmates ever housed in Polunsky, men whose crimes shocked Texas, whose behavior shocked guards, and whose very existence has become legend behind these walls. You'll hear their stories and see what life is really like for a man on death row. Inside the cells, the men of Polunsky, the arrival of a new inmate. For newcomers, the journey to death row is brutal and immediate. The moment they step into Polunsky, the rules of the outside world vanish. There is no welcome, no handshakes. There is only observation and judgment. Former inmate, the first 48 hours are the hardest. You realize no one here is your friend. Every look, every whisper could mean trouble or worse. New inmates are placed in solitary for observation. Guards watch their reactions. Fellow inmates watch for weaknesses. In Polunsky, fear is currency and everyone is bankrupt. Infamous figures. Among the men here are some of Texas' most notorious criminals. Men whose actions made headlines, whose trials were televised, and whose names still send chills through law enforcement. Some are convicted of murder in cold blood, others mass murders. Some are serial offenders. Polunsky houses them all, and for decades, some have refused to speak, refused to cooperate, refused to let the state take anything but their freedom. Psychologists call them the walking dead, not because they have no life, but because life outside these walls has no meaning here. Violence and confinement. Isolation does not erase violence. It concentrates it. Inmates find ways to assert dominance, even in solitary conditions. Fights erupt over small things. Food trays, corners of the recreation yard, even imagined slights. One inmate recalled throwing a cup of hot water across the cell when another man mocked him. Another carved a message into his wall to warn newcomers that the yard was no man's land. Polunsky is not just a prison. It is a battlefield. Psychological warfare. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Polunsky is its ability to twist the mind. Inmates are forced into prolonged isolation. They hear things that aren't there. They see shadows where none exist. Time stretches endlessly. The simplest human interactions, talk, touch, eye contact, are luxuries here. I would hear footsteps in the night. People whisper my name. Sometimes I'd talk to myself. Sometimes I'd answer. Psychologists say this is common. The mind, starved for stimulation, invents its own horrors. In Polunsky, fear is both external and internal. Daily life, routine and ritual. Life on death row is nothing if not repetitive. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, shower, rec time, lights out. Each inmate develops rituals, small act of control in a world designed to strip them of all control. For some, writing letters to family is a lifeline. For others, exercise or prayer becomes the anchor. But no matter the routine, the shadow of death is always present. Every meal, every hour, every night reminds them that this is not temporary. It is forever. Notable incidents when control breaks. Even the strictest order cannot prevent chaos. Fights erupt. Contraband is discovered. Sometimes, inmates attempt escape, though Polunsky is designed to make escape nearly impossible. On one reported occasion, an inmate used improvised weapons during a yard fight. Guards intervened swiftly, but the psychological damage lingered. Fear spreads faster than fire in these halls. The guards' burden. Behind the bars, the tension is mutual. Guards carry their own weight, the responsibility of life and death in their hands. One mistake, one delayed reaction, could end in tragedy. And over decades, even hardened officers admit, Polunsky leaves scars on everyone inside. You learn to separate yourself. You have to. But when you get home, the images, the silence, it stays with you. The darkest corners of Polunsky, the loneliest cells. Some inmates spend decades in the same cell. A room barely larger than a walk-in closet becomes their universe. Walls become companions. Scratches, carving, and messages on the walls are both warnings and memorials. These markings tell stories of survival, of rebellion, of fear, and sometimes despair. Each line etched into concrete is a testament to the relentless passage of time under absolute control. The most notorious inmates. Among the prisoners, some have become legends. Men whose crimes shocked Texas, whose names were printed in every newspaper, whose presence here affects everyone around them. Their influence extends beyond the bars. One inmate, known for his violent outbursts, refuses to speak to guards unless provoked. Another, meticulous and calculated, uses psychological tactics to intimidate newcomers. Even in isolation, these men wield power over others, power born of fear. Former inmate, you learn who the monsters are. You stay away. You don't make eye contact. But sometimes they find you anyway. Violence erupts. Despite 23-hour isolation, violence finds a way in. Fights erupt over the smallest things: food, insults, territory. Guards intervene, but even minor scuffles leave lasting scars. Fear, mistrust, and aggression are constant companions. In one incident, an inmate created a makeshift weapon from a metal tray. During a fight, a guard was slightly injured, but the psychological impact reverberated through the block. Every man knew nothing is truly safe here. Psychological torment. Isolation is not just a punishment. It is psychological warfare. Inmates report hallucinations, paranoia, and severe depression. Some talk to imaginary companions. Some talk to themselves. Time distorts, and the mind becomes both friend and enemy. Inmate, I'd hear whispers at night, names being called, footsteps that weren't there. You start questioning everything, even your own memories. Psychologists warn that long-term solitary confinement can cause permanent mental damage. And yet, this is the reality of life on death row. Alliances and betrayal. Even in isolation, men form alliances. Tiny networks of trust based on necessity and survival. But trust is fragile. Betrayal is constant. A single slip, a single rumor, and an inmate can lose everything: status, privileges, even sanity. These alliances are invisible to guards, but crucial to survival. One wrong step, and an inmate may find himself on the receiving end of both fear and violence. Execution awareness. The shadow of execution hangs over every inmate. Some are decades into their sentence, yet the inevitability of death shapes every action. Some prepare meticulously. Legal appeals, spiritual guidance, letters. Others surrender to despair, letting the walls consume them. Psychologists. The anticipation of death affect behavior in profound ways. Some inmates become hypercontrolled. Others spiral into rage or depression. It's a psychological crucible, one that few can survive without lasting scars. Rare moments of humanity. Yet even here, humanity survives in fragments. A letter to a child. A fleeting smile when recalling a memory. A whispered joke across a wall. These moments are small, fragile rebellions against the cruelty of isolation. They remind us that even in the darkest corners of Polunsky, men are still human. But this humanity is constantly tested, constantly under threat. The guard's perspective. Part 2. Guards live under constant vigilance as well. They are trained for danger, yet even the most experienced officers admit, Polunsky changes you. The endless monotony, punctuated by chaos, leaves a mark. The human mind, whether prisoner or guard, is fragile under these conditions. Veteran guard. You carry what you see here with you, even off duty. The fear, the tension, the quiet desperation, it never really leaves. The final hour, facing death at Polunsky. For some men, decades on death row ends not with freedom, but with a single unavoidable reality. The final hour. At Polunsky, life is measured not by days, but by the countdown to death, a timer that none can stop. The long-term inmates. Some inmates have spent decades here, watching the world change beyond the walls. Some arrived in the 1980s. Some survived multiple appeals. Some endured more than 20, even 30 years in isolation. Yet the psychological strain only deepens with time. Years of confinement transform men. Some become meticulous, controlling every detail of their cell. Others become withdrawn, speaking only when necessary, surviving on routine and mental fortitude alone. And yet, despite decades of survival, the shadow of death looms eternally. Psychologists, long-term inmates develop coping mechanisms that are extreme. Rituals, obsessive behaviors, even hallucinations are common. In some cases, survival is a form of self-torture. The execution process. Execution is the final act in the Polunsky story. The process is clinical, precise, and designed to minimize chaos, but the weight of anticipation is unbearable. Inmates know their final moments will come, sometimes after decades of waiting. Inmates are given time to meet with spiritual advisors, lawyers, and family. Their final meal, a symbolic ritual of choice and autonomy in an environment where autonomy is nearly impossible. And then, the walk to the execution chamber, an act no human should ever take lightly. Psychological toll before death. The hours, days, and weeks leading up to execution are filled with intense psychological pressure. Fear, resignation, anger, and reflection collide. Some inmates write letters, leave messages, or meditate in silence. Others are consumed by rage or despair, lashing out in ways small but significant. You see the change in them. Days before, they might eat normally, pace, read letters. But the closer it gets, the more tense they become. It's palpable. You can feel it in the air. The human element. Even in the face of death, humanity persists. A moment of prayer, a whispered goodbye, a small act of dignity. These are the fragments of life that remain unbroken. And for the guards, those moments are haunting reminders that behind crime and notoriety, there are human beings. These gestures are silent, yet profound, a testament to resilience even when all freedom has been stripped away. Guards reflect. For the guards, the weight is constant. Years spent overseeing men facing death leave marks that are invisible but permanent. The tension, the monotony, the occasional chaos, each moment shapes their psyche in ways outsiders cannot comprehend. Veteran guard, you try to do your job and go home, but you carry it with you. Some nights you can't sleep. You think about what you saw, what you stopped, what you couldn't. Reflections on death row. Death row is a world apart, a place where time loses meaning, where fear and power collide, and where life is measured in fragments. Moments of control, moments of despair, and moments of fleeting humanity. For inmates and guards alike, Polunsky leaves no one unchanged. And for those who survive decade behind these walls, the question remains, when the body remains alive but the world outside has moved on, what does it mean to truly live? Closing reflection. Inside Texas death row, life and death are inseparable. Fear, isolation, violence, and the slow tick of time create a world unlike any other. And yet, even here, glimpses of humanity shine through the darkness. For those who enter Polunsky, one truth is certain. Life will never be the same, even if it ends here. This is Allan B, Polunsky Unit. This is Texas death row. And these are the men who live and die inside its walls. The Allan B, Polunsky Unit is more than steel and concrete. It is a crucible of fear, isolation, and human endurance. Inside these walls, life is measured in fragments, moments of fleeting control, moments of despair, and moments of quiet humanity that refuse to be erased. For those who walk these halls, there is no true escape, not from the walls, not from the rules, and not from the shadow of the end that follows every step. Time stretches, minds bend. Humanity survives barely. Polunsky is a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of the human psyche, the fragility of morality, and the unbearable weight of punishment. And when the doors finally close and silence returns to corridors, one truth remains clear. This is not just a prison. It is a testament to the consequences of crime, the resilience of the human spirit, and the chilling reality of life on death row. For the men inside, every day is a reminder of the life they lost and the life they never had. For the rest of the world, Polunsky remains a warning. Justice is absolute, but so is isolation. And in this place, death is always patient, always waiting just a heartbeat away.